Audiobook Academy. Book Summary. Donkey Skin. By Charles Perrault. This story is comparable to Cinderella due to the ring that fits only one hand. The love between a young princess and a prince is the underlying premise of the novel. So, on one side, we have the frantic princess's father, who wants to marry his own daughter, but is stopped by a fairy who helps the girl escape. A king and queen who are willing to give up everything in order to make their kid happy are on the other side. True love should not be given up on, but fought for and resisted at all costs, as the story's message makes clear. When the prince fell head over heels in love with a stunning princess, he was able to marry her thanks to his tenacity and determination. In the past, there was once a king who was revered by his subjects and considered by them to be the happiest king alive. His friends and family adored him, and his mentors held him in high regard. As well as having a princess as a wife, he also had a beautiful girl as a child with her. In their empire, everything ran well. This kingdom was guided by an experienced king, assisted by a team of sage advisors and obedient aides. In this realm, only the best horses and donkeys could be found, along with a particularly unusual donkey. Because the servants would pick gold beneath him, he had a particular place in the realm. If you can't have both good and bad, you can't have a perfect kingdom. When the queen fell ill, no amount of medicine could have made her better. The queen was on the verge of passing away, and the royal household was in a state of panic. They were cuddled up in bed together. He sobbed because he realized her time was running out. The queen's final request was to be granted. She advised him to remarry, but the monarch insisted that he should not get married again. They had a daughter, and she insisted that he find another queen so that their country might have an offspring and so that their daughter would never have to worry about finding a husband like her father. In order to end her life peacefully, she advised him to give in and find himself a beautiful princess. The king's heart was broken by her lust for him. When it came to the queen's vainness, she thought he couldn't find a replacement for her since she thought there was no other lady on the planet as lovely as she was. When she died, the king was distraught. For months, he wept. After only a few minutes of sobbing, the consultants convened a conference and determined that the king must be forced to remarry. There were tears in his eyes when they informed him of this, because it was too soon for him to find another wife and because the queen had previously warned him not to marry again. So, he decided to take their advice into consideration, and ordered his counselors to look for a better, more attractive, and more intelligent replacement for his late wife. The counselors didn't appreciate his commitment to the queen at all because they didn't think that appearances were relevant to a marriage. They cared about the fact that the new queen gave birth to a boy. It was feared that if the young princess married, her children would not come from a pure bloodline, and the prince may take her away or govern side by side with her, resulting in war between countries. It was the promise of the king that his subjects would be given time to consider the probable repercussions. He made the decision to fulfill his wife's final desire. There were so many attractive girls that he couldn't pick one that he liked enough to spend time with every day. When he was looking at his daughter, he wondered if he could get married to her right now. Upon hearing this, she broke down in tears and begged him not to do anything like this again. When the monarch sought guidance from the priest, he was persuaded that marrying his own daughter was a wise decision. The king was ecstatic that the priest had given his blessing. In his absence, he went to the castle and urged his daughter to make ready for a major wedding. The princess sought guidance from her fairy godmother. Whenever the time came to go home, the princess climbed into the horse-drawn carriage and rode to her godmother. There, the fairy assured her not to worry since everything would be okay if she followed her advice. Because she knows her father will not be able to provide her with a blue dress, the fairy instructed her to tell her father to make one for her. A pleased princess hurried home to her father and begged him for a blue dress if the wedding was to continue. His tailors were commanded by the king to construct the greatest outfit possible, or else they would be punished. The princess was devastated to see the garment the following day. Neither she nor the king knew how to escape the wedding. Once they returned to the fairy, the princess explained to her that she had failed in her plot. She was instructed by the fairy to go to her father and request a moon-colored gown. Everything was repeated since the servants fashioned an even more stunning gown than the previous one had been. A new dress, in the color of the sun, was requested once more. In order to buy her time, the king removed all of the gems from his crown and arranged them on the dress so that it shone as bright as the sun. As soon as the tailors delivered the gown, the princess couldn't bear to even look at it due to its glare. Because they couldn't see the dress, the others wore glasses. In a panic, the princess fled her room, claiming she couldn't look at her dress. Because none of her previous schemes had been successful, the godmother pondered her next course of action carefully. Because she understood how much the king cherished that particular donkey, she advised her to request the skin from it. Her final wish was granted by the king. He didn't give it a second thought when he decided to give up the donkey in order to make the princess happy. When the animal was injured, the princess became desperate. That day had been the happiest of her life, and she should not be depressed about it, the fairy added. They were both able to run away from the castle after she advised them to cover themselves in donkey's skin. Everything else was taken care of by the fairy godmother as well. Wands were given as gifts and were used whenever she required them. The king was unhappy, as he had already begun preparing for the wedding, when she failed to appear. He ordered his guards to search for the princess, but the princess had been rendered invisible by a fairy, so no one was able to see her. When the princess finally located a place where she could work as a servant, she had been on the road for several days. She volunteered to help an elderly woman wash her animals in rags as a way to give back. When she arrived at her destination, she was ecstatic to finally rest after a hard journey and land a job. When the other slaves saw how dedicated she was to her work, they stopped making fun of her. When the lady saw how well the princess was doing her job, she was overjoyed. She looked after the animals and participated in her regular choir practices. Walking near the lake, she noticed her reflection in the water and smiled. When she realized how filthy she was, she decided to wash her face and remove the donkey's skin from her face. She appeared to be as gorgeous as ever. Even though she wore the donkey skin on her way home, she changed into a blue outfit the following day because it was a holiday. Her bag appeared in front of her as she waved her wand. She put on her clothing, nose powder, and hair comb. She regained her princess-like appearance. When she realized how much she loved her own body, she resolved to wear her most gorgeous clothes on Sundays and other special occasions. Because they adored her so much, the animals were the only ones who could appreciate her true beauty. She was referred to as Donkey Skin. When she donned her sun-colored outfit one day, the prince saw her. As a child, he was both his parents' and the public's favorite. After his hunting trip, he had a nice supper and then went for a walk around the estate. He stumbled onto a long alley and followed it to a door when he was out wandering. Through the keyhole, he saw a stunning woman dressed in a long gown, her skin glowing and her hair gleaming. Her appearance made him believe she was an alien. He considered kicking the door down to see if she was real, but he decided against it. When he returned to the castle, he inquired about her whereabouts. He learned that she was known as Donkey Skin and that she cared for animals, which made her appear sad. Because she was always unclean, no one wanted to speak with her. In light of what he had heard, the prince resolved to keep quiet about her. He was so enamored with the girl that he broke out in a fever. Because of this, the mother was distraught and he realized that the only remedy for him would be for him to be with the girl. The queen was desperate to learn what was wrong with her son, so she went to confront him about why he was crying. She was willing to relinquish her crown in order to marry him, and if a princess was involved, she was willing to do whatever it took. To save him, she begged him. After hearing his mother's remarks, the prince burst into tears and promised his mother that he would never let anything unpleasant happen to them because of him. That's not rude enough of him to ask for the crown, and I haven't even decided on a princess yet. He also said he was still willing to follow his parents' orders, despite their protests. As she spoke with him, the mother urged him to tell her what he needed to be happy again, and she continued. He requested that Donkey Skin bake him a cake, and she agreed. After hearing the mother's instructions, the girl was told to create a cake for her son by the mother. Even though she did it, she didn't see that her engagement ring had fallen into the batter until after she had finished. When she asked one of the servants about the prince, he didn't even answer when he came for the cake. The prince began devouring the cake as soon as the servant handed it to him. The emerald ring became lodged in his gullet. The prince kept it in his safe and looked at it from time to time. Donkey Skin was something he had never seen before, and he was afraid to tell anyone about it because he felt they'd think he was insane. To his mother's horror, physicians diagnosed him with anorexia. The parents were quite concerned about their son's well-being. "Tell them which girl you want and they'll bring her to you," they said. When they asked him who he'd marry, he said, "I'll marry the one with the ring." Once they found her, the king told their son that she would make him feel better and that he would marry whomever she chose to be her husband. The ring was first tested by the princesses and duchesses, followed by the slaves. Everyone laughed as he asked for Donkey Skin to arrive at the conclusion. In spite of the warnings, he insisted that everyone should be treated equally, and so his attendants were dispatched to bring her to him. Since she realized she'd misplaced her ring and learned that the prince was on the hunt for its owner, she'd known they were after her. She arrived at the castle after donning her finest gown and covering it with the skin of a donkey. While everyone else thought she was hideous, the ring actually looked good on her. While she was wearing her donkey skin, she threw it down and revealed her true self. Princess with long, golden hair was seen by all of the people in the room. Afterward, her fairy godmother visited and shared her life tale with the future parents-in-law. In his haste to wed her, the prince acted rashly. Having her father there to help with the gardening was all she wanted, she told him. Like the other kingdoms, he was invited to join. Forgiveness was a natural reaction for the princess when she saw her father. A widow with no children was her father's first wife. The newlyweds' love blossomed during the 3-month wedding process. They had an idyllic ending to their story. Princess, good, kind-hearted and working girl that ran away from her father who wanted to marry her. Despite her skepticism, she was confident that she would discover true love. Even though she was a princess, she worked as a maid every day. Those animals who adored her were well cared for by her. She met her Prince Charming with the help of her fairy godmother and had a happily ever after. Even her father's desire to marry her was forgiven. Young prince, beautiful, handsome young man that laid an eye on the princess. His parents were important to him, and he heeded their advice. Seeing the princess, he quickly fell in love, and he became depressed as a result. Thank you for listening in Audiobook Academy. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button for more content like this. See you in next video.